Leaders of the world's top economies met at the G7 summit yesterday, but they failed to convince US President Donald Trump to call for a de-escalation in the Israel-Iran war. Among them was British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, who has over the last few days sent RAF fighter jets to the region for contingency support, likely to protect the UK's own military assets in the region. He has so far refused to answer questions about whether or not Britain would support Israel militarily and maintained that his message for now is de-escalation. But on Sunday, Chancellor Rachel Reeves reaffirmed Britain's position that Israel had a right to defend itself and said the UK had long been concerned about Iran's nuclear capabilities. Now, this echoes identical remarks we've seen and heard from many European leaders over the last few days, including EU President Ursula von der Leyen, who tweeted that Iran was the main source of regional instability. So is there really any hope for de-escalation in this current moment if European leaders are unwilling to exert any real pressure on Israel or the US? Joining us now is Sir Richard Dalton, former senior British diplomat and the UK's ambassador to Iran from 2003 to 2006. Sir Richard, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
What do you make of the UK's response to the war so far?
Well, there's obviously a lot more behind the scenes than appears on the surface. On the surface, it's weak. The emphasis on de-escalation is a buzzword now. It's not really happening, is it? And what we need is a ceasefire. The Prime Minister, I have no doubt, was working with his colleagues in the G7 summit to try and get some more flexibility out of the American position. And we are actually at a rather interesting juncture. I mean, I expect you want to ask for it at some point, but I can talk a little bit about how I see the American position evolving if you wish.
Well, let's talk about that then. We are at this precipice where we could see the United States go into a war, and that could escalate the situation drastically. What would the UK's position be if this were to happen? Would it be obligated to follow its ally that it's been attempting to try and see and forge stronger relations with over the last couple of months? Would it be obligated to follow it into war?
It would not be obligated politically, in security terms, or morally. This is not the British fight. I think there's a lot of sympathy for Israel in the British Parliament, for example, and there may be in the British government, although I have no direct evidence of that. But I think that our Prime Minister and his colleagues will be guided by British interests, and I can't see any circumstances in which it would be in the British interest to get involved in this fight. But why I think that we're at an inflection point in the US position is that it's clear that the United States wants to get back into a negotiation with Iran. And it appears that there's something of a difference opening up between Israel and the United States. It's not been commented on yet, but we've just heard on the BBC the Israeli defense minister talking in terms of unchanged objectives. He said that regime change wasn't objective, but that they want to take action to severely damage what he called the plan to eliminate the state of Israel. Of course, no such plan exists, but that's what he said. He also talked in terms of severely damaging the missile program and the nuclear program. Now, it looks to me as though they've done serious damage already, but we don't know whether they think they have done enough serious damage. And we don't know what the United States' position on that is. Does the United States want to see more damage done? Or do they want to see an early ceasefire achieved by Iranian surrender on the issues that held up a negotiated settlement in the last round of talks? I think that there's potential happy ending in the sense that there ever can be a happy ending after a war, but the Iranians aren't going to surrender what they see as their right to enrich on their soil. They are, however, I believe, prepared to agree a whole series of measures to further diminish the slight risk that nuclear materials might be diverted for military purposes, as they did in the JCPOA in 2015. And I think they might also be willing to send away or blend down under supervision their existing stocks of 60% enriched uranium. I think they would commit themselves to only enriching in future to 3.5%, as they did in the JCPOA. And they might even be prepared to consider a moratorium on any enrichment. So to complete the handover of Fordo to being a research center rather than a production center, and of course to bring back all the JCPOA type controls under IAEA execution. Now, sensible people think that a package like that, restoring the high degree of assurance given by the JCPOA, would make sense. But if Trump is still stuck on the aim of eliminating entirely Iranian enrichment capability, we might see them holding out for the position which defeated a good outcome to the talks in the last round. And we might even see acquiescence in Israel's apparent request that the United States use its unique capabilities to have a go at destroying Fordo. So for all these reasons, there's a lot in play which is not anywhere near the surface. It could be positive, it could be more of the same negative, and we could see the war go on.
I'm glad that you mentioned sensible minds and sensible voices. We just saw at the G Summit yesterday the world's most powerful leaders appearing unable to lay any groundwork with Donald Trump, the US president, regarding de-escalation. How dangerous is this moment, and do we have the clear heads to help us navigate through it?
I've got no inside knowledge, so I can't give you real guidance on that point. The question of restricting and limiting and monitoring the Iranian nuclear program took 2 years plus to negotiate last time, during an atmosphere of goodwill. Now, it took the involvement of the most senior nuclear official on the Iranian side and on the US side. It took the establishment of personal relationships of trust between John Kerry, the senior negotiator, and the then Iranian foreign minister, the senior negotiator on the Iranian side. And it took all that time because the issues are complex. You can achieve a high level of assurance that there will be no Iranian nuclear weapon ever if you are prepared to go through these hoops. And the reason why we don't have any confidence that the United States is willing to do that again is that President Trump, one, is in a hurry, two, appears to have very little understanding of the subtleties and intricacies of a negotiation on assurance of non-proliferation of nuclear weapons, and three, is under the sway of Israel. So for those reasons, I am very seriously worried about the situation. I don't think he wants to launch straight into a military action alongside Israel. He's holding that out as a threat, as a way to try and see whether, to use American words, Iran is now sufficiently on its knees to give to the United States what it withheld at the last round of negotiations in Oman.
Now, speaking about Israel and the Israeli government, for the last 2 years, it has appeared in a large way that Israel is dictating the pace of events in the Middle East and dictating the response that we've seen from its allies in the West. And certainly, if you were to rewind the clock a week, you would have seen the UK and the EU issuing some of the harshest statements against the Israeli government that we have seen in a very long time, only for those statements to be retracted or at least kind of replaced by this mantra that we've heard time and time again: Israel has a right to defend itself, even when in this case it is clear that Israel has initiated a war, a conflict with Iran. Why is it, in your opinion, that its strongest allies, the UK, the EU, have not been able to rein Israel in?
No one is able to rein Israel in because they have the backing of the United States for whatever the Israeli government chooses to do. I mean, going back in history, there have been times when the United States used pressure in addition to diplomatic persuasion. When I first got to Jerusalem as Consul General in 1993, we were in the wake of the effort by James Baker, then Secretary of State in the United States, to get Israel to be serious about limiting settlement expansion. And the United States put a financial cap on its assistance to Israel, deducting from that assistance the amount that Israel was spending on settlements beyond the agreed level of settlement at that time. I mean, how wonderful it was to have a US Secretary of State who was prepared to say things like every time I come to this country, I find that Israel has set up a new settlement, announced a new move against the Palestinian people. I mean, he was prepared to show a little form in resisting Israel. But since then, the only instances that I'm aware of serious influence on Israel has been the refusals of Presidents Obama and Trump and Biden, I believe all three, but I don't know that for certain, to countenance this kind of attack that Israel has just conducted at an earlier stage, because those presidents at that time believed in the possibility of something better than a war. Now, since then, of course, Netanyahu has obtained more leverage rather than less over the United States, and Israel is more of a law unto itself. And as you rightly say, other Western countries have been incredibly limp in not holding Israel to account. I mean, it's incredible to me, after discussion of it for 30 years, that Britain still allows products from the settlements into our jurisdiction. I mean, we are full of mixed messages. And we are full of mixed messages because we are too subservient to the United States. Now, there are some good reasons for that. I mean, it's a pretty difficult job pursuing British interests where they intersect with American activity or American interests under a president like Mr. Trump. It's hard enough at any time. But the desire to be seen not on the wrong side of Mr. Trump happens to be a very powerful motive. And I think people whose only concern is trade and investment will be admiring of the way the British team of Prime Minister, Secretary of State for Trade and Industry, and Ambassador in Washington have conducted the relationship in order to obtain the trade agreement that we have, mitigating the harm which the United States would otherwise have done to our economy.
So, Richard, finally,
maybe Macron.
I wonder if you could reflect briefly on your time spent in Iran as ambassador. What was your sense about what Iranians wanted from not only Britain, but from Europe and from the United States and from the West in general?
Depends who you're talking to. The regime obviously wanted us to soft pedal the diplomatic effort which the European Union was making at the time on four principal topics: nuclear non-proliferation, human rights, the Middle East peace process, and terrorism. I mean, those were the big topics every time a British minister met an Iranian minister. More widely in society and elsewhere, I'm including in society other government officials, they were very keen that we should build up cooperation with Iran in areas which were non-controversial. Culture, to some extent, until Ahmadinejad came along and put a stop to that. Drug cooperation, regional security, the consequences of the invasion of Iraq. There was masses to talk about and masses of overlap in our interests. Subsequent to the toughening of the Iranian position by Ahmadinejad and Khamenei in 2005 and 2006, it became progressively harder and harder to have any sensible dialogue with the Iranians. There were times when they wouldn't receive the British ambassador. And now, of course, one dominant motive in Whitehall, I believe, although this is supposition on my part, is the sense that in addition to having supported the wrong people in Syria, Lebanon, and Gaza, to some degree in the West Bank, insofar as there's a Hamas presence there, Iran has been on the wrong side of an issue of vital importance to British interests and British security, namely Ukraine. So I think that the general view of Iran has seriously deteriorated since my day, and that's been confirmed in many people's minds by the publicity given to the totally unacceptable efforts by the Iranian security state to get at the lives and welfare of people they disapprove of who are living lawfully in our country, broadcasters, journalists, others whom they might class as dissidents. I mean, Iranian threats, the plots which have had to be stopped by MI5 were real and damaging to the lives, for example, of the marvelous people who run the BBC Persian service. So Iran's view, the view taken of Iran couldn't be worse. And then along comes Israel saying, we have an existential issue with Iran and we've got to take action now. And you get senior politicians saying that action by Israel is warranted. They don't look at the legal issues. It absolutely infuriates me that they won't look at the circumstances in international law when preemptive strike against a potential enemy is lawful and when it is not. Israel's strike was illegal aggression. It's the worst international crime. But we're prepared to talk frankly in those terms about Russia, but no, not about Israel.
Sir Richard Dalton, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us today.